social. Thank you. One of the reasons we decided to have this program was to the social media. There's a social media aspect to the book where one of the people in the book wrote a blog about a lot of the students in the school where the book takes place. And so we thought that would be an interesting avenue to discuss. And then we started talking about how social media can affect your life in ways that you may not necessarily think. And one of those ways is looking for a job. So we've asked Raymond Kowalczyk and Kara Schmidt to talk with us today. Raymond's going to start here. He's going to be a little more historical type of thing, and where the whole type of thing, he'll probably correct me on that. And then Kara's going to be a little more on the practical aspect of it. So I'm going to go ahead, and this meeting is being recorded as well. And I am going to stop and turn it over to Ray.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I'm going to share the screen and see what happens. We can all see the PowerPoint only?
Yes.
I guess it all works then. Okay, so social media in modern society, an overview, a warning. And to start off, this is fire. It's one of the revolutionary technologies of mankind. Kept predators away, kept us fed, kept us warm, and we keep on adapting fire into things that keep on making technology better. Internal combustion gives us motion and whatnot. One of the revolutionary technologies of mankind. There is one issue with it. Although very useful, very beneficial, it's also quite hazardous if it gets out of control. It can wipe out entire cities. It can wipe out people, animals, nature. It's very, very destructive. Despite its destructive power, we still contain it in our lives because we have it under our control. If you're watching this in the building, you don't have to walk far to find a fire escape, fire extinguisher, or any sort of fire safety device. Fire is extremely important, but at the same time, because it's so dangerous, the only reason why we allow it in our lives is because we can control it. Kind of like social media, another revolutionary technology. At the same time, it provides great benefit, and it can also provide great destruction. Pandora's box is already open. There's no getting away from social media. So here's a few facts about it so far. Number one, there are 4.48 billion people that are currently on social media with a social media account. 56.8% of the world population age 13 and up is on social media, and 82% of these users are in North America. 93.33% of users on the internet have a social media account, which means a little less than 6% or a little less than 7% are on the internet without social media. So for the most part, we can say if you're on the internet, you probably have a social media account. Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp are the most popular social media sites, each one having over 2 billion users. Facebook is almost at 3 billion. 2.4 hours. That's the amount of time the average user spends on social media per day, which equates to about 5.7 years over a lifetime of 73 years if that person started logging on at age 13. 99% is the percentage of users who use a mobile device to access their social media accounts. So if you've seen people walking around with their phones, well, and they have a social media account, it's more than likely they're looking at their Facebook, whatever it may be. 8.4 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.4 people is the amount of accounts the average social media user has. Now, you take a quick accountability of yourself. I know for a fact I have at least 8. I have 3 different YouTube accounts. I have a Facebook account that I don't use much anymore. I have a Gmail account, which is linked to my WhatsApp account. So yeah, I have multiple users for multiple different reasons. Also too, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. These are the social media websites that are dominated mostly by female users. YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, most of the users are male here. So yes, we're not getting away from social media. It's there, it's here to stay. It has great benefit. And well, there's also some things that are a little bit destructive, and I'm hoping to take you through and bring you some provoking thought on that. So first, I'd like to talk about a few things. The Muslim in Kenya, flat planets. the 5G bioweapon, directional chocolate, and bigger burgers. Starting with directional chocolate, this one's pretty near and dear to me. I've actually gotten into 2 arguments this week with people about the Twix bars. If you're in one of my classes, I probably talked about this. There are people out there that believe that the left Twix and the right Twix are entirely different from each other and have different flavors and different quality behind them. But if you go to the Mars website, they'll flat out tell you the left Twix is enrobed in chocolate, drizzled with drizzled caramel and a crunchy cookie inside. The right Twix is cloaked in chocolate with cascaded caramel and a crispy cookie inside. If you know anything about words, it's basically saying they're the exact same thing. They're exactly the same, but there's a whole society of people out there that actually believe that there's a difference in flavor between left and right. And I'll give you a hint as to why that's true. Yes, hashtag left Twix, hashtag right Twix. Twitter is keeping that argument going. Harmless as it may be, the part that gets on my nerves a little bit is the fact that Mars has not changed the Twix bar in any way, shape, or form, with the exception of the label, but they've gotten people to believe that the quality of the candy bar has actually changed. Seems a little gullible to me, but that's perfectly fine. Another thing that got to my attention was the A&W burger. My colleague Paul Swanson pointed this out to me. I didn't believe him, but I checked it out for myself. You see, back when McDonald's was one of the more popular restaurants, they had the quarter pounder. They still have the quarter pounder. And to compete, A&W came out with the 1/3 pound burger, marketed as the bigger and juicier burger. And of course, that's true. 1/3 is bigger than 1/4. However, most Americans are not very good at math, and they assumed 1/3 was less than 1/4. Of course, any 5th grader who has passed their math class will tell you that that is simply not true. So as a result, A&W came back out and said, we need to compete with McDonald's, and so we're going to release something called the 3/9 burger. It's bigger and it's juicier because of the bigger numbers. And this is actually true. They do have a 3/9 burger to show that, yes, we do have a burger that's bigger than McDonald's quarter pounder. 3/9 is the same as 1/3, but it's an unsimplified fraction. Yes, point being, it's pretty clear to see that we are pretty gullible about social media. And even though we're gullible, if we choose a point of view, we'll defend it to the end of the earth. That's how it seems to be. It seems a bit dangerous, and it's all being controlled by a few people. It seems like we're all puppets on stage, and these are your puppet masters. Yes, on the left there is the YouTube CEO, Susan Wojcicki. In the middle there is Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook. On the upper right, that's Zhang Yiming. He is the founder of TikTok. And down below is Jack Dorsey. These are the most powerful and social media sites with the most users on them. Let's focus on this guy in the middle, Mark Zuckerberg. We can easily say that he revolutionized social media. I think social media has been around since 1996. Remember ICQ? That's when it's been around. But Facebook revolutionized everything. I think it's safe to say that social media right now, they follow Facebook's business model since about 2007. And Mark Zuckerberg has said in the past that he's a hacker. And in addition to that, he's been quoted as saying the term hacker has an unfairly negative connotation. In reality, hacking just means building something quickly or testing the boundaries of what can be done. Like most things, it can be used for good or bad, but the vast majority of hackers I've met tend to be idealistic people who want to have a positive impact on the world. So he's changing the definitions of words, and if you Google the word hacker, you'll find this. It's a person who uses computers to gain unauthorized access to data, or a person or thing that hacks or cuts roughly. I'm sort of thinking we're looking at the first definition of this word. And despite him trying to change the connotation behind hacker, I feel like actions speak louder than words. And here's a little bit of history behind what this man has done in the past. Harvard University has a newspaper called the Harvard Crimson. And in Mark Zuckerberg's sophomore year of Harvard, he released Facebook for the first time, just to the Harvard students. And when he released it, he had some users on there that worked for the Harvard Crimson. And he checked them out and saw they had some failed login attempts. He took those failed login attempts, saw the email address, probably the Harvard Crimson one, looked at the failed login attempts and said, I wonder if any of these passwords are the ones that go to the actual newspaper website. Sure enough, they did, and he used that information to go in and get into people's email accounts without their permission. Also, too, you may have heard of Cambridge Analytica, European data analysis company. Yes, they went ahead and took personal information on Facebook without users' permission to try and predict voter turnout for the 2016 election. They shared that data with other countries, and despite the data theft, Facebook said they didn't violate Facebook policy, but they didn't abide by their rule not to share the information with third parties. This is something that's still under investigation today. Even so, Facebook did very little to stop this from happening and didn't even notify the users that their data was being used. Kind of shady there. And Facebook was fined as a result for $5 billion, and no questions were answered about the association with Cambridge Analytica, including the fact that some of the executives may or may not have been involved with implementing this data analysis software. Also, too, as recently as April of 2021, 533 million Facebook accounts were hacked and had personal information stolen. In a press release, Facebook said the data was scraped and not hacked, but tomato, tomato, they mean the same thing. The information that was gained is still useful for hackers to steal identities. Facebook also failed to inform users in a timely manner and didn't really do much to stop that one there, no questions answered. So back to this, yes, hackers an unfairly negative connotation? Well, I think actions speak louder than words. You should ask yourself, what exactly does a hacker do? In addition, anyone know who this guy is? He should look a little familiar to you. 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama. We should know who he is, but the question really is he a Muslim who was born in Kenya, or is he a Christian born in Hawaii? If you go on the internet and search it, you'll find data that supports both. You may have heard about this one too. What does our planet look like? Is it flat shaped with a dark side, or is it a marble in space? And once again, if you Google this, what does our planet look like? You'll find evidence for the fact the Earth is round. You'll find evidence for the fact the world is flat as well. But the point being, if it's on the internet, then it must be true, and do not question its authenticity. Abe Lincoln said this back in 1863. Everything on the internet is true, but it can't be, because those are two mutually exclusive questions. Both of them were. Here's the problem. Abe Lincoln, I believe, died in 1865, April of 1865. So yeah, he could very well have said this. The other problem is the internet wasn't created until January 1st, 1983. 83, 63, 1983 and 1863, there's no way he could have possibly said this. This is called critical thinking. This is something that we've kind of lost with regard to social media. It seems like today, the truest information is that which is portrayed by people with the most followers. Critical thinking, we've kind of done away with that one. And of course, people might say, well, you found the information about Abe Lincoln and the internet's invention date on the internet itself, so how can you possibly trust that? Well, to people who say things like that, I feel they're not mature enough to be using the internet in the first place. We're supposed to be critically thinking about the information we get, and recently it's not really being a thing anymore. Critical thinking is sort of a rare skill these days. Now, as far as where the president was born, 44th president was born, and as far as the Twix bars go, those are kind of fun things to do. But there are some more harmful implications of doing those as well. Did you hear that the 5G network is actually being built to spread COVID-19? Have you heard about this one? Apparently the 5G waves, they're so light that they can actually carry trace amounts of the COVID-19 virus and transmit it to people through our phones. It's how the establishment locks us down with the pandemic and makes us stay home to save on fuel. Also a way to get us to take vaccines, which actually cause autism. If you've been paying attention, I've cited all my sources. On the bottom of the screen, I didn't cite this one because all of this was found in comments in social media. Yes, but if we use some critical thinking skills, we can actually figure out if this is true or not. First of all, the weight of the average virus is 1/quintillionth of 1 gram. So it seems likely that something as light as a radio wave could actually carry it. You've probably seen those grocery bags getting caught in the wind on a breezy day. Those can go across state lines if it's windy enough. And so a plastic bag weighs trillions of times more than a virus. It's pretty safe to say that the viruses are pretty airborne. But as far as carrying them on radio waves, well, that's not possible because radio waves, light waves, they have absolutely no weight. It's impossible. In fact, you're more likely to float down the hallway on the building's wind current from the ventilation system than it is for a virus to carry itself on a radio wave. Critical thinking has proven that this is not possible. Even so, in Europe, about 77 cell phone towers were set ablaze by people who actually believe this. And where did this actually come from? Well, it came from Facebook memes that sort of look like this one. Yes, 5G cell towers, weaponized 5G bat. People actually believe this stuff and go ahead and take actions in the real world because of the lack of critical thinking skills, causing millions of dollars worth of damage. But that goes to Facebook business model. Have you seen the whistleblower interview on 60 Minutes? Basically, this whistleblower came out and told us about how Facebook makes money. Facebook needs its users to view content, like content, comment on content, and share content. That's how they make money with the ad revenue. They've also found that negative posts, misinformation, and posts that provoke anger spread the fastest and with the most reach. You saw this yourself if you read the book, One of Us is Lying. The character Simon had a website where it would spread rumors that were actually true about certain students in the high school. Yeah, everyone hated being on that site. Everyone hated the site, but they could not look away. Negative content spreads the fastest and has the most reach in the book and also in the real world. As a result, Facebook's model needs to keep spreading that negative information. There's also something that came out about teen girls having lower self-esteem from being on Instagram. And of course, Facebook came out and disputed that. And they said, well, we did a study of 40 people and they had no depression. 40 people, when there's more than 2 billion users, not a very good sample size, kind of a cover up. But if you keep saying things and you have most followers, people will more than likely believe it to be true. Just something to think about. Have you heard about the Tower of Babel and St. Peter's Ledger? Yeah, Tower of Babel specifically, it's in the book of Genesis in the Bible. I'm no Christian, but I know that this is arguably a Christian nation I'm trying to make the most reach. But in the book of Genesis, chapter 11, verses 1 through 9, it tells the story of the Tower of Babel. Society got together and said, we can do anything that we put our minds to. And they said, we should go ahead and stack bricks, stack wood, stack buildings, and try to make a tower that's so big that it can actually reach into heaven and we can go there and meet God. No need to follow the word, no need to die. You can go to heaven just by climbing the tower. Seems like a good idea. Well, it got accomplished, and once it did, God came down and said, yeah, that's not going to happen. And so he took the tower, toppled it, and spread people out and gave them languages. Well, if you're not a Christian, what this is analogous to is technology and a force of nature. I feel like one interpretation of this could be there are some technologies that we shouldn't really have. And if we do, the forces of nature will come down, destroy us all. Yes, so be careful with this one. Remember this guy right here? That's Brett Kavanaugh, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. A few years back, he got in trouble after being accused of rape. Yes, he was found to be not guilty, but the one thing we should take away from this is how they investigated him. Something happened in college, in his college years, about 20 years prior. And he allegedly assaulted this woman, and they started looking into his past. He was found to be not guilty, but what we should take away from this is the way they investigated the crime. They were looking into his past and coming up with things that he did 20 years prior. Now, what he was accused of is pretty serious. I'm not saying we should just sweep it under the rug. I'm hoping there's a way to find out heinous crimes like this, get to the truth as soon as they possibly can. But the way they were looking into his past to see if he can get a certain job offer, had they done more, what could that have meant for us as a society? We're a common law country. Whatever has the precedent, well, that can take place for us as well. So we could have our lives hacked into and looked at and examined and judged to see if we should hold a certain position. Are you proud of everything you did as an adolescent? Are there some clothes you wore, some fads that you put up with, some games you played that are maybe not quite acceptable? Maybe some things you did that you're not quite proud of, maybe some illegal things you've done. I'm sure there's quite a few. But the thing is, these mistakes we made in our youth are essential to making us the adults we are today. These things that we're embarrassed about, they were supposed to help us grow. But if taken out of context, we can make judgments about people and then deem how they are in today's society, which is not quite fair. But that's how the world is these days. With social media, we take pictures, we post it, anyone can go ahead and make judgments. Tupac Shakur made this phrase popular, only God can judge me. And that's the way it should be. Whatever we did in the past that does not affect us today should not be judged by people today. That's just the way it should be. Unfortunately, with social media, well, everything is pretty much out there. The way it works in the Christian religion is we die, we go to heaven, and then we meet this man. And that's St. Peter. In St. Peter's hand is a ledger that shows our entire life from birth to death. And based on that book's good deeds and bad deeds, we determine whether or not we can go inside the pearly gates or go to the other place. So everything we did is accounted for in St. Peter's ledger. But now with Facebook, especially if you were born after 2005, you may have had parents that were taking pictures of you as a child and posting that on social media for anyone to go back and look at. Is it fair to have humans judge out of context to see if we should hold a certain job? Is that something that we should have power over? In fact, something really creepy, there are ultrasounds on social media. Imagine that you exist in social media before you actually exist in the world. This is something that could be a technology that we're not supposed to have. And just wait, nature might take its course and do something to change humanity for good. Could possibly be. Finally, I'd like to leave you with this. You got to ask yourself a question. Are you a user of social media or are you an addict of social media? Very important question. There's a series of questions you should ask yourself. First one being, do you have trouble making eye contact with others during face-to-face interactions? Are you easily offended by opposing viewpoints? Bear in mind, we just got through the pandemic. The only human interaction a lot of us got were through a computer screen. And the problem with that is there's these things called echo chambers that come up. And it's a bunch of people that have the same viewpoints and keep telling us we're correct without having any critical analysis done. Do you have trouble expressing your thoughts orally? Do you put your phone on the table next to you at meetings or social gatherings? And can you leave your phone behind for a minimum of 3 hours? If you have trouble with these things, it could be evidence that you have a social media addiction, which means you may have lost control. As college students, it's kind of important because if you're studying or doing work, your mental process should look something like this. You perform a task. First 5 minutes, that's you getting adjusted. After you're adjusted, 40 minutes, you're in some sort of a free flow. That's when time flies. 5 minutes after 40, you'll start losing focus. And then at that point, you're supposed to take a 10-minute break. If you have a cell phone or social media or something dinging, distracting you, you will never get out of those first 5 minutes. It'll just keep repeating over and over and over again. And I know this to be true because I teach my accounting classes, and the homework I assign on the worst day should never take more than 2 hours. But I've looked at evidence, and it shows that some students take 6 and sometimes 8 hours to complete their homework. When I get screenshots, they look something like this. Yes, they don't know the answer to the problem, but up top, look at the tabs up there. Look what they've got open. Email, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tinder, TikTok. They've got every single distraction possible going on. So of course, if you're trying to concentrate on homework and everything keeps dinging up there, it's like you're begging the internet to distract you. This is why I think students spend over 8 hours in their homework when it should only be taking them about 45 to an hour. So once again, I leave you with this. Social media, it's a fire. It has great benefits. It can keep you in contact with people, give you job opportunities. But at the same time, if out of control, it'll lead a path of destruction that can probably destroy more lives than one. So ask yourself, are you in control or is the social media in control? And that's all for me.
So, thank you, Ray. A lot to think about there, some interesting stuff, and it really is some things to think about here. So, and at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Kara Schmidt from the Career Center.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ray. That was awesome. Thank you for that presentation and very thought-provoking. I recently saw a sonogram on Facebook and didn't even think about what you said. You know, we're seeing pictures of this baby that's really not even of the world yet in some ways. So very interesting, and thanks for that. Something to think about for sure. And my presentation today will take a bit of a spin from Ray's. Mine's more based on using social media in your job search. Again, I'm Kara Schmidt and I work in career services. So I work very closely with students that are job seeking and looking for ways to connect with employers. And we, of course, use social media for that quite frequently. So give me just a second to pull this up. Hold on just a moment. And let me know if someone could let me know, are you seeing my first slide?
We are, yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's talk just a few minutes about how to be social media savvy in your job search and how you can really take the benefits of social media and have those work for you. Step away from some of the things that can be seen, of course, as a negative as we kind of navigate our world through social media. So first off, why should you use social media in your job search? And there's lots of different ways, but one of the first things I would talk about is that it does help you build your personal brand. You know, it helps employers know what you stand for, what you've accomplished, and even what you're capable of achieving. Also, as we keep reading, it lets you network and connect in ways that you can't in person. You know, with online networking, you have an opportunity to speak to a wider audience, an opportunity to be a part of groups and social events, perhaps, that maybe you wouldn't be a part of in person. Maybe they're happening in an area that, you know, you don't live in even perhaps. So it does give you an opportunity to grow your network a little bit. Also, it makes you more visible to hiring managers and recruiters that use social media to get prospective candidates. Even when you aren't actively searching for a job, you can show a certain level of interest in a particular business and what they have going on via your social media. Of course, you can interact with companies that you hope to work for. Using social media for your job search can allow you an opportunity to start a conversation with someone from from an organization that you're considering looking into. And finally, at the very least, social media can help demonstrate to potential employers that you do have a level of technological skills and understand the internet, social media trends, and so forth. Do employers really stalk me on Facebook? Yeah, they really do. A 2020 poll of over 1,000 hiring managers found that 67% of employers use social media sites to research potential candidates. Almost 70%, that's quite a few. 70%, or almost 3/4 of those employers, believe that every company should screen potential candidates' profiles. And then here's the thing that we hear about, but here we're looking at in a real percentage form. About half of employers can rule out a candidate due to finding something that they consider unfavorable on their social media. So it is important. It's important to use it for the good and watch yourself for the bad. And if you're not using social media in your job search, you're probably going to be missing out on some things. So where do you start? How do you get yourself ready to really dive into the field of social media? One of the first things is by cleaning up your existing accounts. Ray mentioned earlier that on average, I believe he said 8 1/4, was it 8 plus accounts for most people, which just seems fairly accurate. Clean those accounts up. Review your existing social media accounts with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that what you're seeing is employer appropriate. Delete or hide old posts or photos that might seem questionable to an employer, okay? Google yourself. You want to see what employers are going to see when they look at you. Google your traditional spelling of your name, a nickname that you might use, and a former name that you may have had, perhaps a maiden name or something like that. See what comes up. What we want employers to see when they Google you would be something like your LinkedIn account or something that shows some professional affiliations that you're a part of. What we don't want them to see are things that kind of accentuate the bad, right? We don't want them to see some pictures from a party you were at 3 weekends ago or 2 years ago or something of that nature. If you find something that's incorrect or misleading, this will give you an opportunity to try to fix that. Clean up those social media accounts before an employer has an opportunity to stumble across some things maybe that you don't want them to see. After you clean up, what's next? Now so we've cleaned it up, we've taken away or tried to hide some of the things that we don't want to jump out right away. But what do? You want to acknowledge your positives. Maybe you recently completed a new certification or a training. Add those to your LinkedIn account. Share that on Twitter. Once you have your social media profiles in shape, it's time to let your profile and your skills kind of do the talking for you. Did you volunteer with an organization? Take a picture put it on Instagram. Talk about those things that you've done that show you in a positive light. Social media is a tool for your job search, and we need to use it in a way that can be a benefit to you. Also, you can use some of your own skills to do a bit of detective work. Being savvy in social media isn't only about cleaning up your own presence. You can use it to research a company that you're thinking about. Of course, go to their website. You've heard that before, and I would always advocate for that. But also, it's to your benefit to go a bit deeper than that. See, does someone from the company do a weekly or a monthly blog? Look for that. Look for posts and tweets to get a sense of the tone and the communication strategies and how the company really works behind what they put on their website. Look at those things. Do a little bit of detective work on your own. Keep up with the company on social media can also come in handy if you're called in for a job interview. Take that information that you've learned from reading it through a blog or reading through their tweets to strike up a conversation in an interview. Sometimes it's just that one little piece that makes you stand out more so than another candidate. That one little piece of something that you found and you can speak of in an interview setting might make you stand out from everyone else in the interview. Talking about networking on social media, very important. Leveraging social media as a networking tool is a great way to stay connected to people who can help you out and create meaningful connections in a virtual environment. What I mean by that is be sure to like and share posts that others have written or shared. Comment, congratulate them on their accomplishments. This is how you network and get to know people. Offer help and advice when you can, okay? Like I said in the point two, it's not only about gathering likes and connections for yourself. Work with others in your network as well. Grow your network by making connections. Perhaps you join a niche group that is, particular to a certain topic or a certain activity or some particular type of position that you're interested in. Make connections based on your interests and get to know people and network that way as well. What types of things should you be sharing on different types of social media? Easily, things that post and highlight your excellent communication skills, community engagement, involvement, things that you're taking a part of, content that could be a benefit to others, things like industry news that you could be sharing via LinkedIn or Facebook that talk about something that's happening within your field. And where should you share those type of things? Let's talk about that. Just like I think that this first point we see here, Ray had mentioned, Facebook currently has 2.8 billion users, 2.89 billion users, so nearly 3 billion. It's the biggest social network. It's used around the world. It's often thought of for personal use, but it can be used to easily maintain a professional appearance and build business relationships. Be sure, though, your security settings are set correctly. Restrict all of your information to friends only. Limit access of friends that you don't want to see things like perhaps coworkers, maybe your boss if you're friends on Facebook, something like that. But let's keep this in mind. Security settings are never foolproof, okay? You're always better off not to post those things that could be seen of as questionable, I'll just say. Definitely have your settings set as tight as you possibly can, but realize sometimes things can still get through, okay? LinkedIn. LinkedIn has 740 million users. Students and recent graduates are the fastest growing member segment on LinkedIn. LinkedIn allows you to establish a professional identity, grow your network, and build relationships with potential employers. Think of this more as more of a professional version of Facebook, if you would. Profile pages can emphasize employment history and your education. Also utilize professional network feeds and skills endorsements. You have an opportunity to tag companies or updates and shares that you're interested in And that is another way to begin a conversation. Also, we'll talk briefly about Twitter. 260 million users in Twitter. Be careful. I think tweets are very easily misconstrued. You know, you can only have 140 characters per each tweet. So sometimes I think they can come across in a way that the author didn't intend, or maybe even hard to understand. Get rid of those cutesy and funny usernames when you're using Twitter in a professional sense. Usernames reflecting your actual identity work well when networking professionally. And also follow and retweet to establish professional relationships on Twitter. Using Twitter to learn what's new in your field by following Twitter handles from your other professional organizations and businesses you might like to work for is just another way to leverage yourself and network within social media. Ray talked about this a little bit. I'll go into it a little bit more. Be smart. Be smart about what you post. Don't post things like excessive partying, drinking, of course, drug use. No photos of you in provocative or inappropriate situations. Also, watch the words that you use. Do not be speaking poorly on a post about a college instructor or a previous employer. Employers are looking for those things. Obviously, no hate speech related to race, gender, religion, politics. That's never accurate. Don't do that. Here's a thing that I've seen before, and you probably have too. Don't post pictures of yourself driving a car, or don't post things when you should be at work, when you're on the clock. Employers look at those things. Don't do that. Finally, poor grammar, spelling errors. When you're using social media in a professional setting, all of these things matter, okay? And I know y'all know what I mean. You also know employers will search you on social media. What you think is awesome when you're 18 or 21 may not be the same type of awesome when you're 25 or 30, okay? Be aware, think of your future self as you're posting things on social media. Wrapping up, okay? Social media is more than memes, travel photos, and bad jokes. Keep yourself current on social media, but don't be that person. And by that, I mean the one that overshares. And I know y'all know who that is too, right? Be engaging, but not annoying. Leveraging social media to assist you in your job search is a savvy move, one that can be very powerful to you into landing your next job. Any questions, I'm happy to help you through Career Services. Again, my name is Kara Schmidt. My email's on the screen. If you need some help putting together a LinkedIn account, or if you'd like me to search through your accounts and see what I come up with, like a potential employer, I'd be happy to do that as well. Career Services is here to give you a hand. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Kara, and thank you, Ray. I appreciate that. A lot of really good information here. Ray's is thought-provoking, Kara much more practical, and things that I've suggested before thought of many times with a whole bunch of this. So I'm going to open the floor here. Does anybody have any questions for either Ray or Kara? You can either put them in the chat, or if you have a microphone, go ahead and open that up. And I'm thinking we don't have any questions. So Ray, I'd just like to touch on your point a little bit about the critical thinking skills. That's something that we do here in the library. That's, that's kind of our stock in trade anymore, is the whole critical thinking aspect of it. And so drives me bonkers. So if nobody has anything else, then we will let you go. I will be following up with everybody who's attended today with a feedback survey, and I will send that out to you by email here later on this afternoon. So thank you all for attending. We appreciate that, and I will stop the recording.